So Daniel Eliot is Director of Education and Strategic Initiatives at the National Cybersecurity Alliance, the NCSA. It is a leading neutral nonprofit public-private partnership devoted to strengthening America's cybersecurity through awareness and education. Daniel runs Cybersecure My Business, which is a national program designed to help businesses of all sizes learn to be safer and more secure online. He brings together the federal government, state and local governments, academia, and the private sector to discuss cutting-edge issues and create and implement high-quality, large-scale education and awareness efforts. Daniel is an accomplished speaker and champion when it comes to cybersecurity and regularly speaks at events across the country and collaborates on regional and national cybersecurity initiatives. Daniel, I'm going to keep going with your little bio on a personal note. We started this program in January of last year. You may not have heard of it until July because we had a lot of work to do. But Daniel used to be the SBDC cybersecurity director, manager, we're called all sorts of things in SBDC world, in Delaware, in the state of Delaware. Daniel was one of the first people that really had an amazing cybersecurity program for a small business in the nation. Daniel, along with Zara in SBDC Michigan, mentored us, the SBDC in Colorado, to create the program we have now. There are still things from SBDC Delaware on our website because we love to share and collaborate, and Daniel is the best example of an SBDC doing that to help launch a program on another side of the country. So thank you, Daniel, for your help, and thank you for coming back again. The stage is yours.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that extended bio.
You're welcome.
That was wonderful. And I love being here in Colorado, which I think is the most beautiful state in the nation. And I don't say that to every state I go to, all right? I do think Colorado is the most beautiful state, my gosh. And I am, just so you know, sporting my Tech Wears tie that I got last year. Thank you, Drew. And I will say, though, if you decide to purchase one, particularly the tie, when you go through TSA check, take it out of your suitcase before having them scan your luggage. Because I didn't do that, and they thought I was carrying on a long, pointy weapon. And so just be sure you take it out of your luggage before going through the scanner and the security check. But no, I love being here. And as my mic's not on? Oh, is that? Test. Oh, that sounds better. That's better. All right, sorry. What I said before, if you didn't hear it, it wasn't worth anything anyway. So thank you for allowing me to come here. The National Cybersecurity Alliance is a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. And as Ekta said, we really try to bring together multiple audiences to educate the nation's constituents about cybersecurity and best practices around cybersecurity. And so I'm going to talk specifically about some of the small business-focused topics that I get to go around the country talking about. And so the National Cybersecurity Alliance, we deliver education through large-scale campaigns. For instance, this is October. Happy National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, right? Hopefully you all knew it was National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We co-lead that with Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. We have co-led that with them for the last 16 years in the nation's effort to really rally all the troops across the country to educate everyone on basic cybersecurity awareness. Now, we also lead a few other campaigns, like the Cybersecurity My Business program. We lead Data Privacy Day for North America, which is January 28th, if you're in the privacy space in particular. But I want to just talk a little bit about National Cybersecurity Awareness Month and how you can get involved. And so the theme of this year is Own It, Protect It, Secure It. Right? And so part of the way you can get involved in National Cybersecurity Awareness Month and champion that theme of Own It, Protect It, Secure It is by becoming a champion of National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And I know today is what, October 22nd? 5th? Okay, sorry, I've lost a few days in the year. October 25th today, right? And so there's still time for you to become a champion and take the information that you receive from the National Cybersecurity Alliance is co-created with the Department of Homeland Security and amplify the message, push it out through your network. All boats rise with the tide, right? It requires everyone to be sharing information because we at National Cybersecurity Alliance cannot do it alone. And so you receive, when you sign up to be a champion, you receive a toolkit that you can wipe our branding off and put yours on or co-brand it, whatever you want to do with it. The point is to amplify the message and spread that awareness. So I encourage you to take part in that, and also you can join in the conversation with the hashtag #BeCyberSmart and hashtag CyberAware to join in those Twitter conversations and Facebook conversations or whatever other platform you're on. So when we look at the global risks, right, this is by now, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and you've had a lot of cybersecurity sessions now under your belt. This should not be a surprise, right? The World Economic Forum in 2008, they issued the 3 top global risks. And of course, natural disasters, extreme weather, and cybersecurity were those top 3 that they focused on. Now, even though cybersecurity makes that top list, that top 3, we're still seeing reports like this being issued. This one's from a 2019 Keeper Security study, right? 66% of senior decision makers do not believe they're likely to be a target by a cyber attack. Still, we see that 60% report they do not have a cyber attack prevention plan. We have 21 ranked it at the dead last as far as cybersecurity, and we have 20 or 60% put it somewhere near the bottom. So we know we need to think about it, but we're just going to put it down there near the bottom and worry about it later, right? Part of what Rodney said that I love, hope is not a good cybersecurity strategy. That 60%, they're hoping that they don't get hacked, right? They're using hope as that strategy. We also see supply chain vulnerability, right? An average of 73%. This is from Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report. 73 security incidents were attributable or linked to third parties over the last 9 years, right? We brought up Target, right? That was through the HVAC system or the HVAC supplier. We're still seeing vulnerabilities all the time coming from third-party suppliers because, well, what are we not doing? We're not focusing on them, right? If we have a provider of goods and services accessing our networks or providing goods and services to our business, we need to be holding them accountable. We don't just need to hold ourselves accountable, we need to hold them accountable. And particularly, I know there are a lot of MSPs or managed services providers in this room. Who are the cyber criminals targeting? They're targeting MSPs. They're targeting managed services providers. Why would I, as a hacker, go for one small business in Colorado Springs when I can go for a managed services provider who handles or has access to many different small, medium-sized businesses or large businesses, right? They're targeting managed services providers because they know they can get into that network and access many different businesses. And so managed services providers have to be able to demonstrate to their customers that they have a strong cybersecurity posture. And are you doing that? So then what we're left with then is opportunity. I like to be positive, right? I do yoga, it kind of centers me, and I like to talk about the positives and how we can we need to understand the threats, but we also need to understand how to move forward. And so there's opportunity here for you as a small, medium-sized business, right? There's opportunity for you to demonstrate your cybersecurity posture to those you do business with, right? We've moved beyond now this whole nice-to-have to a must-have cybersecurity strategy. You have to have a plan in place. What does that look like? We'll talk in a little bit. Business continuity, right? If you want to scale your business in today's environment, you have to think about business continuity in terms of not only fire, flood, natural disaster of a avalanche or whatever else happens out here in Colorado, tornado. But you also have to think about cybersecurity as part of that business continuity plan. There's increased scrutiny from those you do business with. I know there was a session on NIST 800-171, right? The Department of Defense in particular is saying you need to follow this framework in order to demonstrate that you're making a reasonable effort to protect these data. I was with Bank of America a few weeks ago in Charlotte, and they said that they do 7 layers of security audits with their suppliers. So they're not just looking at a person who's providing goods and services directly to them, but who's providing goods and services to them, and who's providing goods and services to them. It blew my mind trying to think of how to map that even. But you see organizations looking at who they're doing business with and being more critical about who they're doing business with. So as a small business, a competitive advantage would be for you to have a strong cybersecurity posture and then know how to communicate that. Because people do business with those they trust, right? And they want to trust you. They want to trust that you're going to protect their data, right? That you're not going to be the weak link in their cybersecurity strategy. And we also have to think that hopefully, through my National Cybersecurity Alliance's efforts, SBDCs across the country, et cetera, that consumers are becoming savvier with this stuff. Before they enter their information on a website, they want to see that it's secure, right? When they go into a physical office, they want to see that you're taking steps to protect their information. Not everyone, but they're getting better through national scale efforts. And so we want to make sure that we're posturing ourselves in a way that we're instilling confidence in people. Now, do you want to go out and wave a flag saying we're 100% cyber secure, right? No, because then you can put a target on your back and no one is 100% cyber secure. But how do you at least instill confidence with your business partners and your customers? And a strong competitive advantage with cybersecurity is important because you're protecting intellectual property that you have, right? Or treasured communications that are sensitive. And a strong cybersecurity posture for you when it comes to competitive advantage would be protecting information that you need to protect. Because what if you have a rogue employee who leaves and shares that intellectual property with a competitor or shares your marketing lists with a competitor? How are you limiting access to certain information? We talked about segmenting access to individuals on a need-to-know basis, right, or need-to-access basis. Right? It's the principle of least privilege, right? Give the people the least amount of access possible for them to achieve their job. So I like to cover misconceptions in these sessions because I think there are a lot of them out there. And we already talked about the first one, right? My data is not valuable, right? We have to understand that everyone's data is valuable. And we have to go home and talk to our families and tell them that their data is valuable. Right? Our previous executive director, he was the chief privacy officer of Visa, and he's from Brooklyn. He'd always say, after a workshop, go call your mother, right? Sorry if you're from Brooklyn, that's probably a bad accent. But he would say, go call your mother, right? Go tell her about cybersecurity, what you learned. And so I hope after this session, after this day, you go call your mother, right? You go tell her, you go tell your father, your children, your colleagues, your board, what you learned and how we can all better improve our security. Cybersecurity is the job of the IT staff, right? That's a misconception. Cybersecurity is every individual's job in the organization because everyone has access to information. Everyone has email, right? They're all clicking on links. From HR to payroll, procurement to marketing, the intern, everyone has a responsibility for protecting the organization. It's not just the job of the IT staff. So we have to rethink our mindset when we think about cybersecurity. It's a team sport. I know there was a session on insurance, so all I'm going to say with this, because I'm not an insurance expert, is that many people think that they might be covered by general liability insurance, and that's not always the case. Right? And so what I implore you to do is understand what your coverage is. And then if you aren't covered by cybersecurity insurance, you go out and you explore and compare different policies, right? Because they vary vastly. Some might not cover ransomware. Some might not cover nation-state attacks. So they all vary, and so be sure that you're comparing them and being a good consumer of insurance. Cyber attacks always come from external actors, right? We're talking about all these fancy names. And I just have to say, cyber criminals and their groups always have the coolest names. I think we should start renaming them, like Limp Bizkit, or something that's not as sexy and cool, right? They have the coolest names. But cyber attacks don't always come from external actors, those people in Russia and China and North Dakota, wherever they are. They can also come from within the organization, right? That employee that doesn't get their raise or doesn't get promoted. The employee non-maliciously who makes a mistake and sends an email to the unintended recipient, right? Maybe they have a personally identifiable information that they email to the wrong recipient. That's a mistake. But that is an insider threat that we have to think about. Millennials. Now, I will say millennials, the poor things, have been beaten and beaten and beaten. But and now Generation X is entering the workforce as of 2019. They're graduating college and entering. But we often think that younger people are better at cybersecurity than others, right? So in a small business, oftentimes, who gets responsibility for managing the social media? Who gets responsibility for making updates to the website, managing the website? It's usually the youngest person. Why? Because they're young. They know how to use technology, right? But that's a fallacy. Microsoft did a study that showed that younger individuals are no better at cybersecurity than others. Actually, they're worse because they've been born into this culture of trusting things online and always clicking on links, right? And so what I implore you to do is if you're giving anyone access to managing any of your network or your systems, train them. Train them on cybersecurity best practices, what your expectations are of use, right? This is a process component to this whole piece of this whole cybersecurity thing. We talked about industry standards in Rodney's session. For those of you who didn't attend his session, I just want to implore you that compliance with HIPAA or compliance with PCI, those are compliance measures, and they're good. They're a good starting point for cybersecurity, but they are not a cybersecurity strategy, okay? They are just one component of a robust cybersecurity strategy. Now, digital and physical security. We often only think about cybersecurity in terms of data assets, right? Who's going to hack into my network and access whatever? We often don't think about the physical layout of our office. Who can walk into my office, pick up the server, and walk out with it? Is the door open? Is it sitting right there? Right? Is it locked? I want you to think about two-factor and multi-factor authentication in terms of physical access as well, right? So if anybody walks into the building or that you have a key to get into the building, that's one point of validation. And then maybe you have the server behind a locked door that has a different key. That's a second form of physical multi-factor authentication, right? We have to think about the layouts of our offices. Car dealers, I apologize if you're a car dealer, they are just open season for hackers. Last time I was in an auto dealership, I was sitting in a room full of cubicles that had computers at every cubicle, and no one else was in there with me. I could have done anything in that room I wanted to. So physical security. I'm also always in airports, right? I travel all around the country all the time. What do I see when I'm at an airport bar or at an airport gate? I see someone who's working on their work-issued laptop, and they say, "Excuse me, sir, would you mind watching this while I go to the restroom?" I say, "Sure, why not?" And then I go back to reading my book or doing whatever. Now, when they come back, I educate them. It's like, you don't know who I am, but I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what you just did. Now, we don't think about the physical security. We're too trusting when it comes to just leaving our devices in places, right? Hopefully, none of you, when you got up to leave, left your laptop just sitting on these tables, right? So we have to rethink cybersecurity, not in terms of just digital assets, but the physical assets. How are your employees taking care of all these assets that are work issued, that they need to take care of? With new software and devices, wrapping up these misconceptions, just because something's new doesn't mean it's secure, right? When we sign up for a new social media channel or we sign up for a new online account, we have to make sure that immediately we go in and configure our privacy settings, right? Make sure they're not sharing information, more information than what we want to share. Same goes with a physical device, right? When you bring that router into your home, you should update the software immediately. So not assuming that everything is current or that everything has current software or that it's secure the moment you buy it, because it's just not. We have to own that piece of our security. And then lastly, of course, if I train an employee once, they'll retain it forever. That's never been the case. That's never going to be the case, right? And so cybersecurity, just like everything else, requires continual education. And you heard a lot about threats from the experts who presented before me. And these cyber criminals are smart and they're savvy and they continue to evolve their tactics as we become smarter. And they try to stay not 2 steps, not 4 steps, but 5, 10, 15 steps ahead of us, right? And so we have to continue to educate our employees and ourselves. Now, when we define cybersecurity, it's always hard to define it. And Brian Krebs from Krebs on Security defined it this way, and I loved it. He said, cybersecurity is making it easier for employees to do the right thing and harder for them to do the wrong thing. And I thought that was a brilliant definition. For not just cybersecurity, right? For anything within an organization. I always want to make it easier for my employees to do the right thing, and I always want to make it harder for them to do the wrong thing. And so how do we do that? Well, we approach cybersecurity in 3 ways: with people, process, and technology. And I put people first for a reason, right? Because as you've seen in many of these talks today, that cybersecurity really is a people problem, right? Cybercriminals know they can manipulate humans. And so that's why they target humans. Bruce Sneer is a great cybersecurity expert and privacy expert. He wrote in one of his books that and I'm going to paraphrase because I won't get the quote exactly right, but he said a novice hacker will attack a machine, an expert hacker will attack a human, right? And so even if you write the word security down, if you write it down and you circle the U and you circle the R and you circle the I and the T together, in the word security is you are it. Right? It's in the word. And so this is a people problem. So how are we teaching our employees to identify a malicious email? How are we teaching employees to follow the processes and procedures that we create? And the second piece of it is that process. How do we encourage employees to make the right decisions, or make it easier for them to make the right decisions, by building processes and procedures around them to help them make good decisions? For instance, the most basic process that I often see violated is if there's a request for a wire transfer coming into an organization, right? All right, the boss needs a wire transfer right now. He's in Cancun and can't get me any more details, so just transfer these $500,000 right away, or whatever it is. A basic process for that would be a secondary form of validation to verify the legitimacy of that request, right? Verify to clarify. So you get the email, so then you call the person requesting that. And you don't use the phone number that's you use the phone number that's in a trusted account, right? So call them to verify. Or you walk down the hall or up the stairs to verify. There has to be some secondary validation. So that's a process that an organization could build in to guide good behavior, make it easier for them. And I was going to say, lastly, the technology component. Because it doesn't matter how much technology you throw at this cybersecurity problem. If you don't have trained employees and you don't guide their behavior with policies and procedures, it doesn't matter what the technology is. They'll get around it. So when we talk about, all this cybersecurity stuff, because it's mind-numbing, right? Many of you probably are going to leave here and be like, well, I don't know where to start. And I'm just going to unplug my laptop and my server, my refrigerator, my toaster, and whatever else is internet connected that you've decided to bring into your home or business. And so you need to start somewhere. So there are some frameworks that you can use, right? The National Institute of Standards and Technology, they created the NIST cybersecurity framework, not just they, but they and industry partners. That's one framework you can use. And they break it into functions of identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Now, if you don't like the NIST framework, fine. There's also the Center for Internet Security's controls for small to medium-sized enterprises. You can use that resource to begin creating a cybersecurity strategy for your organization. Whatever it is, when you look at these frameworks, don't think you have to do it all at once, right? This is a phased approach to security. That's where people just give up the moment before they even start, right? So use these frameworks and phase in security, right? Do a few of the controls that you know you can accomplish right now, and then seek assistance from some of the more technical ones that you need help with. So I like to ask a lot of questions to leadership, and I like to ask these questions to leadership and to their information security providers or information security support. So as the organization, as we integrate and deploy new technologies, right, how do we understand the risks associated with those? For instance, there was a hospital system in Florida, a smaller hospital system. It got through procurement, and they purchased all these new internet-connected beds. It was wonderful for whatever they were trying to do. No one consulted the chief information security officer of that hospital system. And so after they paid for all these internet-connected hospital beds, and these each are probably $100,000, it's the medical industry, right? So then they didn't understand the risks that those new internet-connected hospital beds were bringing into that hospital system, right? Just think of all the opportunities for hackers to hack into a bed. So how are we thinking about the risks? It goes the same at home, right? These new technologies that we're bringing into our homes. There was an article not too long ago about these new internet-connected hair flatteners or straighteners, whatever you call them, right? Wonderful. Get it, whatever you want to do to straighten your hair. But they were talking about the security risks where they could hack into it and turn up the heat on it and burn your house down, right? How are you understanding the risks associated with these technologies that you're bringing into your home and business? How are we creating a more cyber-vigilant culture within our own organization? Are we asking ourselves these questions? Are we tightening up on our onboarding and offboarding processes? So are we teaching employees before or when they're hired, maybe even before they're hired? And what are we doing when they leave our organization? And the same goes for vendors, right? If we no longer work with a vendor, how do we know that they no longer have access to our information? Or if one of their employees leaves, what are their protocols for making sure that that employee doesn't have access to my information anymore? How are we building in structures to evaluate our suppliers and their suppliers of suppliers? And then lastly, how is the overall cybersecurity of my organization? And if you were to ask the CEO this last question, and if you were to ask the IT person, the CEO would probably be like, yeah, we're okay. We're doing okay. The IT professional would be like, oh my God, the building's burning down, right? So different perspectives, but you have to have this conversation. And oftentimes, the conversation is tricky because we don't know how to communicate with each other. Cybersecurity professionals oftentimes don't know how to communicate terms that a business professional would understand, right? They don't know how to couch the threats to an organization in terms of risk or return on investment. And the business executive doesn't understand the technical jargon. So we have to be bilingual, if you will. Be bilingual technologists, be bilingual business leaders. And that comes with education. So with each of these, right, as we integrate and deploy new technologies, we have to do an audit of what technologies are connected to our network, or what devices are connected to our networks. And are there stopgaps in place for if someone is making a purchase of an internet-connected devices, that we are evaluating the risks before that purchase is made, right? Large and small organizations. Do we ensure we have manual backups? So with this, we've talked about the need for backups, and I always liken backing up your data to diversifying your financial portfolio, right? You don't want to put all your money in one stock. You want to have your money spread out across multiple stocks, so if one goes down, you don't lose all your money. Same goes for data backups, right? Having your data backed up in multiple locations and types of media. Now, one question I like to ask is, if we were to lose access to our computers and we were to lose access to our backups, do we have manual processes that we could return to continue providing goods and services to our business partners, our customers? Do we have any manual processes to keep our business going? That's a question you might want to ask yourselves. So as long as we're talking about that, right, we're talking about building these cultures of cybersecurity within an organization. That's a difficult challenge, right? But it involves many different functions within the organization. As I said, cybersecurity is a team sport. If the IT group creates a cybersecurity strategy, it's going to be too myopic. It's going to be too narrow because it's only from their perspective. Same if the board creates a strategy or if the C-suite creates a strategy. We need to bring everyone together to create a cybersecurity strategy for our organization. Because what sales is out there doing in the field, they might be doing something that we have no idea about. The way they collect their data and store their data, or whatever else they're doing with their leads. And so we need to bring everyone together to the table to create our cyber resilience strategy. And so with that, we have to understand the human element of cybersecurity and that humans are easily manipulated, right? And so we have to educate them as much as we can. It also begins at the top. If you're the leader of your organization, are you modeling good behaviors? Are you setting the precedent for cybersecurity so that others can follow? And then it flows down. And I will also say that when it comes to cybersecurity best practices, training the CEO, if you bring in a new CEO for your business or a new vice president, their level doesn't mean they're smarter at cybersecurity than anyone else, but for some reason, we don't train our executive leaders on cybersecurity as much as we do our lower level employees, right? So how are we also forcing the higher ups to take this seriously? It begins on day one, right? As we hire a new employee, we need to train that employee on day one and then continue that training throughout the life cycle of their career. Employees should know who to report threats to. As you're building a culture of cybersecurity, the last thing you want to do is for an employee to click on a link and then kind of sweep it under the rug and say, let's see what happens, right? That's the last thing you want them to do. You want them to feel empowered to approach someone within the organization to report that they think they made a mistake and not to be reprimanded. Now, if they've done it 5 or 6 times, then you might need to reprimand them, and that should be part of your whole review process and your evaluation process. But if they make a mistake, they should feel empowered to reach out to you. And who is that? Is it clearly articulated? And then with like punitive and non-punitive interventions, making sure that they don't feel like they're going to be punished if they do make a mistake, but also thinking seriously about your organization and the risk to your organization. If you have an employee that continually poses a threat to your business, that might need to factor in to their promotion ability or their tenure at your organization. So how are we tightening up on our onboarding and offboarding? I harp on this one in particular. I want a show of hands. How many of you were trained on email security before being given access to email? Okay, well, good job, Colorado Springs. I had 4 hands. That's better than most places. That's better than most places. I was in Austin, Texas 2 days ago, and 1 person raised their hand. Why? Why are we not training employees on email security? If greater than 90% of cyber incidents begin with an email, right? And I say greater than 90% because usually it's 92 or 95 or 96, depending on what study you read, but it's always over 90. Why are we not training our employees on email security before giving them access to email, right? Oftentimes, we hire them, and then they have about a year at the organization, and then we put them through a computer-based training or through a class like this, and we train them on email security. They've had a whole year to mess things up. Why are we not training them on email security? Email, we train people on how to drive a car, right? It's a deadly machine. And I live in Philadelphia. They're even deadlier there because people don't know how to drive, right? So it's a deadly machine. We train people on how to use it safely. Email is a deadly technology for business. You've seen the statistics here today. It could cripple a business. LabCorp incident, right? The LabCorp hack, it was through I think it was a billing company, right? They now file bankruptcy, this small billing company. It could cripple a business. So why are we not taking this deathly technology seriously for businesses with training employees on how to protect our enterprise? And number 4, how are we building in structures to evaluate these vendors that we have, right? What questions are you asking the suppliers or your vendors? Such as, when an employee leaves, how do you remove access, right? What is your process for purging off files and records upon completion of the service or task, right? Such as, can your company send the results of your last security audit? And that could also be, you can ask that question of your, MSPs, of your MSP for cybersecurity services. What's the results of their last security audit, right? What is their security posture? What are they doing to protect you? Because there are a lot of organizations that say they provide cybersecurity services, but that's just kind of an add-on. They're not cybersecurity professionals. And so we have to really understand who we're doing business with. We have to be more critical of that. And it's not just MSPs in cybersecurity and IT. It's your accounting or your bookkeepers, right? Your lawyers, your medical offices that you go to. I had a dentist's office the other day. I was making an appointment for a new dentist, and they asked me for my Social Security number. And I said, you don't need my Social Security number, so don't stop asking that. If I were on Medicare, they would need it, right? Because it's a federal program, but they don't need it for anybody else. And so being better consumers and asking those questions of our contractors, right? Also, do an inventory, right, of who has access to your network. Do vendors who no longer provide goods and services to you still have access, right? Do that thorough audit. But this isn't just a us versus them concept, right? We all need to be talking about this and asking these questions of leadership and technologists, et cetera, because we all are on the same page. We all want to protect the information, right? And so we need to make this, again, a team sport. Help them help you. And then lastly, how is the overall cybersecurity of my organization? I talked about getting input from various functions, getting input from external organizations on how cybersecure is my organization, right? Know where your vulnerabilities lie. You can't protect what you don't know you have, right? So do an audit of all of your information assets, the most critical ones you need to protect, and then figure out ways to protect them. Know where your vulnerabilities lie. Know what the crown jewels are of your organization that you need to protect. And ask a lot of these questions regularly, right? I know I put a lot of questions in here because I want you to be asking questions. I want you to question your employees on what the cybersecurity posture is of their function, or if it's just a solopreneur, are you asking yourself these questions, right? How cybersecure is my business? And then, as Rodney pointed out, take action when you get answers, right? When you get results, because the lawyers will say, did you make a reasonable effort to protect your data, right? They won't define reasonable effort, but they'll say, did you take a reasonable effort? And if you had a security audit and you did not take action on that security audit, then that's failing to take a reasonable effort to protect your data. Now, what I will also say is the answer to that is not to not have a security audit, because then if you don't have a security audit, then you don't have to worry about it, right? That's also not an answer, right? You need to have external guidance on the security posture of your organization. And so, but you have to take action on those results. So these quick wins, if you want to take a photo of it, you can. They've all been covered in all the other sessions, so I'm not going to cover them here. The only thing I will talk about is with the social media, take care with what you share, is that, we understand that, you've probably been given the guidance of, don't share that you're traveling and you're going on vacation, right? So we'll be gone in Jamaica for 2 weeks, so everybody will have fun, right? So people know you're gone, right? It's also boils down to how are you creating a digital profile for others? For instance, for those of you who have children, are you creating an online presence for them? Are you removing their control to access their online lives? because it stays with them forever, right? So as you post the next photo of your child or of colleagues or whoever it is, think about how you're removing their control of curating their own online persona. Because most of you, are of the generation where all of this was new, and you got to start from scratch and create your online profile, right? Many people now are just born into this, and thanks to everyone who's sharing information about everybody before they come of age and start controlling their online profile, they're starting out at a disadvantage. And so all I'm going to say to that is make sure that you're thinking about how you're controlling other people's access or control of their information online. I will also say with businesses, a great policy is to restrict access or restrict photo taking in your business, right? Because we know that people put Post-it notes of their passwords on their computers, right? Or their posters of critical information in your business. If there are photos taken in your business, they could capture that and then be posted online. So I always say just restrict photos completely or video completely in your office. There's no need for it, really. And if you have to have a photo area, have a specific area that's only designated for photos or videos. Now, I listed out some of these resources. This NIST Cybersecurity is Everyone's Job is a great resource that outlines different functions within an organization and their responsibilities for cybersecurity. Of course, the Stay Safe Online website. NIST, because of a presidential order, just created the NIST Cybersecurity Corner. It's really a collection of small business-focused resources that you can use to educate yourselves. I'm going to skip down to the FTC's resource because the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, they're really our consumer protection division of the federal government. They're here to make sure that companies aren't, engaging in deceptive practices, right? And so they have a lot of resources for small, medium-sized businesses that you can download. You can order them in bulk. My office at home looks like an FTC distribution center. You can order 100, 500 of them, 1,000, and use them to educate your employees. And they're all basic, non-technical guidance. And so, of course, I want to end with National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I hope you own it, protect it, and secure it. I hope you get engaged by becoming a champion. And it takes the first step of you coming here in learning. And as I always say, cybersecurity is not a sexy topic, right? And so it's hard to get people to show up for cybersecurity. No, access to capital, that's a sexy topic, right? Getting marketing leads, that's a sexy topic. That gets people in the door. But cybersecurity, it's hard to get people in the door. So thank you all for coming out and for participating in this event. I love seeing regional efforts like this and getting to participate in them. And so thanks for the invitation. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over
to Dr. Sean Murray.
To Dr. Sean Murray. Okay, thank you.